The Black Iron King laughed. Very good. But I'm going to need to hear it from Mesotora. You do understand, Valus, that while you are the current ruler, should his son return, it is also possible that his fair wife may regain her state of sense, which means that she would return to the seat. So it is important that she understands that it is her husband who made the arrangement. Therefore, she will be bound to it as well. I do need to ensure that the person who shows up to the Royal Summit is the one who agrees to it. If it isn't you, then it'll be pointless in the end, the Black Iron King said, looking back towards Mesotora. So, do I have your word as well, that when all is said and done, you will get your wife to agree that she will allow me the expansion of my kingdom? Mesotora grit his teeth for a moment. He couldn't stand it. Out of all of the kingdoms in the demon realm, the kingdom ruled by the Black Iron King himself was the most tyrannous, so much so that even the other demon kingdoms found it cruel. It was a kingdom of absolutes, where the strongest absolutely rules over all those weaker than them. Power is the only thing that means anything, and if you don't possess it, you might as well be dead, or at least you'll wish you were. Allowing him to expand was a terrifying concept. Could he really trade for it? Was he willing to allow this man to become more powerful, if it meant he could claim his son again? No, it doesn't matter. Regardless of the consequence, I don't care, Mesotora thought to himself. I need my son back. I need my wife back. I want my family back, he thought to himself angrily, looking up to the Black Iron King. Fine. We have an accord. I'll see to it that my wife agrees that you can expand your kingdom. Now, the information, if you would. Very well. You've made a wise decision, the Black Iron King said, raising his hand, pressing two fingers together and snapping them. The crack was intensely loud. It even seemed to put off a bit of a shockwave, echoing throughout the walls, at which point 2 men entered the room, both wearing black cloaks. Mesotora had noticed them as he entered the room, standing beside the doorway. He assumed they were part of the royal envoy. The deal has been made. Transport the prisoners here immediately. Custody of them will be transferred to the Matara Kingdom. Yes, Your Majesty, both of them said in unison, as they walked to a central point in the room, a cleared space, and began drawing out circles. Mesotora immediately noted these as circles of transportation that would allow to transport 2 individuals, 1 for each circle, at which point the 2 men stopped, and as an aura of demonic energy came over them, placed their hand by the seal, and 2 bright flashes of light rang out, filling the room. And as it began to subside, 2 individuals sat there in the circles, both men looking of average build, wearing what, well, looked like used to be fine clothes, now torn, covered in blood and dirt. Their faces looked pounded, covered in bruises and cuts, burn marks. In fact, their entire bodies looked much the same. their clothes in tatters and covered in scorch marks in their own blood. Rung around their necks, 2 collars, emblazoned with magical symbols. And there we are, the Black Iron King said, gesturing towards the men. Mesotora immediately noticed one of them, as the merchant that he oh so long ago threatened. He hadn't changed much in that time. He looked a bit older, but not much. Even through the bruises, burns, and cuts, he could still tell it was him. But now he had a face of, well, complete and utter defeat, simply glaring down at the floor absent-mindedly, as if he had been drained of all hope and ambition. Now, you two, I'm going to need you to tell these nice gentlemen everything you told us, and do be specific. Yes, at once, the 2 men said. We'll tell them everything. We began working together some time ago. We found each other good business partners. We made lots of money together. We eventually began making a great deal more money in kidnapping. We would abduct the children or family members of wealthy or powerful individuals, then hold them at ransom and gain great wealth upon their return. We've been doing it for nearly 80 years now. We had spoken about moving things up, targeting more powerful people, but we didn't have the means until about 10 years ago. The higher profile our victims are, the more protections that they have. To begin targeting members of royal families, we would need something that would allow our employees to get past their systems of protection. After many years of research and development, funneling money into the topic, we managed to create something that would fulfill our needs. A powerful magical artifact. It is a crystal that serves multiple functions that we had custom created at great personal expense. Normally, demons are unable to pass through the wards that are produced in powerful places. But this crystal holds a special ability. Many, in fact. The first of which allows them to bypass these barriers. Essentially, the barriers are created so that demonic presences of a certain level cannot pass, but others are unaffected. So the crystal works by, well, super compressing the demonic reading of mid to low level demons. A powerful demon would be still unable to pass through. They simply produce too much demonic energy. But a mid or low level demon can wear the gem as a necklace or a charm, and in doing so it will super compress the demonic energy, making it read no different than a bird or a rat or something of that nature. Something small and insignificant, able to pass through wards undetected. But the gem also has a secondary effect, another ability, which is key and instrumental to, well, our plans. The gem would allow for inter-realm travel. Basically, the gem is fixed so that it connects to 2 realms. The one specifically used for your son was connected to the demon realm and the human realm. And with its use, even without the use of a normal gate, one can pass from one realm to the next, so long as they know the location that they're traveling to. And if they don't, They are simply deposited somewhere out of the way, where there are no or very few life signs, so it is discreet. We gave the sun to a well-known abductor, one that we had used many times before, but myself and my partner could not agree on what to do with your son. I wanted him dead, but my partner insisted on sticking to the previous arrangement. Take them and then hold them for ransom. I could not allow my vengeance to escape me, so I double paid the man that we had performing the job. He wasn't to return with your son. Once he used the crystal to pass to the human world, he would kill him and then return afterwards to receive the other half of his payment, which would be much greater than usual. This payment would specifically come from me alone. My partner was unaware of this change in plans. However, something went wrong. I don't know what exactly, but my associate never returned. At first, I assumed that your guards had somehow caught him, killed him, that it was a failure. But there were still the words, the rumors that your son had disappeared, that were soon enough verified by you still being on the search for him. I thought perhaps that he had simply betrayed us, so I went to the human world to check. I used magic to transport myself to him, but all I found when I did was his corpse. He had been decapitated and stripped of all his clothing, and the child that should have been with him was not. At first, I assumed a double cross, that perhaps my partner had betrayed me, found out about my plans and tried to reassert his own. But after some intense negotiation and finally broaching the topic, we found that he was not responsible for it. We don't know who took your son from there, but whoever it was took the crystal along with them. We do know that whoever it was, they were not a demon. They were most likely either a human or some other form of entity, one that does not produce demonic energy. How would you know that? If you don't know who took him, then how would you know? Mesotora said, stepping towards them angrily. Start explaining. Well, it's simple enough. The crystal was a large investment, so we track it. We imbued it with another set of functions that we simply did not tell the associate that we gave it to about. The crystal absorbs small amounts of demonic energy from whoever it is who holds it and sends a signal back to our realm. So long as we have a sample of the demonic energy that belongs to the individual wearing the necklace, then we can track them wherever they are, even across different realms. But that feature only works when the crystal is in the possession of someone who produces demonic energy. But we were receiving no signal from the crystal, which could only mean that it wasn't in the possession of someone who possessed demonic energy, someone who was human or perhaps from another realm. So, despite the fact that they still held the crystal, we could not track them. But a short time ago, only a day or so, the crystal began emitting a signal again, once more chiming with the detectors that we had installed, sending a corresponding signal. But of course, the demonic signal was not that of the kidnapper that we sent to abduct your son. It was a different demonic signal, and based on the readings, far more powerful. We surmised that since it was the human realm, where very powerful demons are rare at best, that the only reasonable explanation was that somehow the crystal had recently fallen into your son's possession, that he carries the crystal on him, and thus it absorbs his demonic energy and transmits a signal back to us. But we are still unable to track the signal because we don't have a corresponding sample. But your troops have been using them in order to try to search. With this new development, we could reassert the original plan. Capture your son, hold him at ransom, just as we had originally planned. But in order to do that, we needed a sample of his demonic energy. We had planned to assault one of the groups that had been given possession of one of the samples of your son's demonic energy, kill them and acquire the sample. By using it, we would be able to track him, to find his exact location. We would have a jump start on everyone. They would be searching blindly, while we would be able to head straight for him with no delay. There was no question that, under this circumstance, we would reach him first. But we needed to move at haste. We had no time for subtlety. And whilst gathering the men and resources we needed to assail one of your groups that was in possession of one of these samples, we were required to give more information than we truly wanted, and we were betrayed. They turned us in before we could act. At that point, Mesotora stepped towards the man, Cirrus, grasping him by his tattered and burnt clothing and lifting him off of his feet, glaring him directly in the eyes with a terrifying expression. Now his eyes beginning to glow a bright red, his hair beginning to glow and float aloft as if it was catching fire, smoke starting to rise out of the armor he bore, waves of heat emanating from his teeth that now bared themselves in his direction. Here's the $1 million question. The detector, the one that you used to track the gem. Are you still in possession of it? He said, glaring up at the man he held in his grasp, who quite frankly looked terrified. Yes, I'm still in possession of it. It's a gem just like the one that your son most likely now possesses. It's in my pocket. Mesotora rapidly reached into the man's pocket, and there he felt it, a gem that he pulled out with haste, ripping the man's clothing as he did, and not caring. He held in his hand a small crystal with a metal brace on the end of it, scrawled with magical patterns and emitting a strange fluorescent rainbow light. That crystal is connected to the other one. All one needs do is find a sample of the demonic energy of the person who holds the other crystal. Place it against that one and it will absorb it, at which point it will act as a compass, so long as you are within the same realm as the person you're looking for, the person who has the other crystal, and that energy is that of the person bearing it, then it will begin to pull itself in that direction, guiding you to them. It was in that moment that Mesotora gently lowered the man to his feet, letting go of him. and staring at the crystal in his grasp. "Thank you. You've been quite helpful," he said as he clasped his hand around the crystal. "You're thanking?" And before he could even say another word, Mesotora shifted his stance, looking in the man's direction, opening his mouth, as a gout of fire, so bright and so intense, lit out that it seemed like it would turn everything in the world to ash. An explosive wave of fire erupted from the castle, blowing right through the walls, exploding everything outward, extending for what seemed like forever. Across the skyline of the entire city it could be seen, lighting up everything like a second sun, whilst the shattered and melted pieces of the castle crumbled outward, falling to the ground in heaps of rubble, mostly melted as they scorched their way into the earth surrounding the castle. And as that gout of fire finally began to subside, there, standing in front of a massive gaping wound in the castle itself, stood Mesotora at the edge of a vast chasm, staring out of the massive hole he had blown into the castle. Valus and the Black Iron King were very taken back in the moment. The Black Iron King stood defensive for a moment as the attack hit, but then began to grow calm as the fire subsided, and he noticed Valus wasn't doing anything else. But he had turned both the men to ashes. There was no way that there was anything left of either of them. "Valus," Mesotora said, looking over. "I need you to do me a favor," Mesotora said. "I now know that you weren't responsible for my son's disappearance. Forgive me for not trusting you, and let me ask of you a favor. I'm going to the human world to find my son. If you truly love your sister, then protect her. Ensure her wards stay in place. She should survive even if I'm not there to feed her. Just don't enter the room. I shall repay the distrust that I had in you by trusting you now to watch over what is most precious to me, while I go take care of some business. Can you do that, Valus?" Mesotora said, still glaring at the crystal in his hand. "Yes, of course, brother. I assure you in your absence no harm will come to my sister. Her safety will be my top priority." "Good," Mesotora replied, as he turned away from the gaping chasm that he had blown in the castle, exiting through the doors and walking out of the room, or what was left of it, wind sweeping through, finally beginning to cool the now molten stone and obsidian that remained as the hell dragon of Matara set forth for the human world.